You're watching Business Access TV.
Business Access.
Business Access.
Business Access.
Business Access.
You are watching Business Access TV.
Business Access TV.
Serious about business.
Serious about business.
We're here at the Montego Bay Convention Center in St. James for the 12th Annual Inter-American Network on Government Procurement Conference. This is a meeting ground for more than 32 member countries who are here to discuss everything on public procurement. Of course, Jamaica leads the region in the area of public procurement with its eGov procurement system. And here with me, I have Paulo Magina. He is head of the procurement unit at the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you.
All right, so we had a presentation from you earlier today about public procurement and the work of the OECD. Tell us a little bit more about that.
The OECD has been working in public procurement for many years now. So we are developing policy guidance for our member countries, but also for other countries outside of the OECD. And in Latin America, we are working with many countries like Chile, Peru, Mexico, and Colombia. And we try to provide good guidance and help countries improving their procurement systems.
And how would you say the area of public procurement is in the region in terms of its advancement?
I think there are challenges and there are opportunities, and the region is becoming more and more aware of the recent trends and modern trends in public procurement. And our idea in coming to this conference, it's the second time that I'm attending this conference. It's a very important conference for the region. And our idea, as I said, is to come up and bring good practices from OECD countries, which are considered to be the most developed countries in the world. So we want to share the practices that we have and that we are aware of.
Okay, and in your presentation you also spoke about a particular toolkit. Tell us a little bit about that.
Exactly. We are developing this toolkit, as we call it, toolbox, because we produced the OECD recommendation on public procurement last year. It was adopted by the OECD Council, which is the highest form of endorsement that we have. So this OECD recommendation is bringing 12 principles that countries should follow in terms of implementing good public procurement systems. In order to help countries implementing these procurement systems, we came up with this toolbox that we published and is now online on our website that you can visit and you can use it. And we are bringing more and more country cases, examples, checklists, good practices that the countries should follow, or at least they should try to understand what other countries are also doing in order for them to improve the procurement systems. I believe it's a good thing that this kind of toolbox are important to share with countries, yes.
Okay, and how long did it take to develop this toolbox?
Oh, it's a project that we started developing beginning of the year, beginning of 2016, collecting cases and going through our reviews and reports, trying to come up with the practices. And well, it went live on October. We had some IT development as well. The search mechanism, the search engine is really strong and powerful. And well, it took us like 6 months of full work on that.
And what's the reception been like in terms of persons, downloading and using it?
Well, it's ramping up. It's a starting process. It's starting now. But we have some feedback from countries, and countries are now willing to share more case studies with us. So we have, for instance, Australia. We have Chile, we have other countries outside of the OECD willing to share their practices with us. And the idea is to use this toolbox as a platform, bringing links from other countries. I will put the INGP link, the practices you have in the region as well in the toolbox. So I believe it will ramp up, I guess.
Okay, and where do you see public procurement for the region in the future?
Well, procurement, for me, it's the most important single activity a government can conduct in order to impact the economy. And I believe this says everything about public procurement. We are talking in OECD countries of 12% of GDP, 1/3 of government expenditures, and 2/3 are spent at subnational level. So if you think about it, the size of public procurement, the impact that procurement has to provide good services and works to the citizens, we are talking about a huge amount of power that procurement officials hold in their hands. Maybe they are not aware of it. So our idea is to become more and more strategic. So procurement is becoming more and more strategic, meaning that procurement is now being used to achieve other policy objectives. We are talking about sustainability. We are talking about innovation, support to SMEs, social objectives. So there is a lot to consider when you do public procurement. Procurement is also aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. They were published last year, and we have a specific role to improve public administrations. So if you think about this is the vision that we pursue for the future of public procurement, to become more and more strategic, to incorporate the work related to infrastructure. So a lot of things are happening in the public procurement world these days, and we are proud to be part of it.
The first issue, which people have been mentioning time and time again over the course of this conference, why do we care so much about public contracting? Well, one of the reasons is it's huge amounts of public money, right? I think the OECD has estimated that it's $9.5 trillion every year in public procurement alone. And someone told me, and again, I'm not sure what kind of truth or lie this is, but someone told me that if you take 9.5 trillion $1 bills and pile them up, that's enough to go to the moon and back. It's true. So a few of us around the world back in 2012, people working at the World Bank, at the OECD, at different institutions, Transparency International, different governments like the government of Colombia, Philippines, got together and started to think, okay, we've got some issues in public contracting. Are there any kind of is there a new partnership we can form? Are there new ideas that we can bring to the table to try to address these problems? Because as we all know, right from the get-go, there can be problems in public contracting. In English, at least, I know this says that it was only supposed to be a small change in the technical specifications. So I hope that translates in Spanish. But basically the idea that it's all about how we can look at this whole process right from the very beginning and really work together to get it right. And I really want to emphasize partnership, collaboration together. It really underpins everything I'm going to be talking about. So just to kind of be clear from the beginning, what do I mean when I talk about open contracting? It's about basically bringing together concepts of open data, concepts of public disclosure, and engagement with citizen, business, and government, bringing the stakeholders together around that information to facilitate analysis, monitoring, and feedback and fixes. So how can we work together to better use information to get to the goals that we're trying to accomplish with public contracting? So it's exactly about bringing together these different stakeholder groups. And of course, there's only 3 little guys up on the screen, but we know in real life there's dozens of actors involved. When we think about the government, we're thinking about auditors, we're thinking about project managers, we're thinking about ministers and policymakers, we're thinking about controllers. There's so many different actors who are interested in the success of public contracting. Likewise, when we talk about civil society, we can think about the technologists, the social enterprises, the journalists, the transparency organizations, the public integrity monitoring organizations. And then when we think about business, we have our contractors, we have our potential contractors, our potential bidders, their associations, the professional associations, all of these different groups who are very invested in the success of the public contracting system.
Tell us about the work of your unit, affectionately known as PAPU.
At PAPU, yes. It's the Procurement and Asset Policy Unit, and we are responsible for the entire public procurement reform agenda, looking at legislative reform, the institutionalization of the procurement profession, so we do training, capacity building for both the public and the private sector. We do compliance audits. We represent the government at international organizations and in negotiations on government procurement matters. And we're also the contact point for all our stakeholders, including the private sector, if there are any issues regarding procurement matters that they need clarified.
So the INGP conference that's happening right now, tell us about how that plays into the role of PAPU.
Excellent. The Inter-American Network on Government Procurement, it's going 12 years now, and Jamaica has been part of it for quite a number of years. And through this integration and knowledge sharing experience, Jamaica has learned from all of the countries that have participated. The network is made up of 32 countries, Latin American and Caribbean countries. And so on an annual basis, we have this conference and we look at the issues that affect us. So it is not just focused on a single country and its procurement reform agenda, but also what is happening across the region. And so you take the lessons from what is happening in more advanced countries with their procurement reform systems, with those that are even behind what is happening in the Caribbean. And so you will find that we're at different stages in our procurement initiatives. However, we are able to learn from each other, build on lessons learned, and take strong recommendations and in the reform process. But fundamental to this network is the access to resources. So the partnerships that we have in the network and funding, the access to funding through the IDB, the World Bank, and you have other institutions that have come on board more recently, including the Caribbean Development Bank. They offer financial support. They also offer technical support. So we are able to build on those relationships, get access to some resources which will actually propel our reform agenda. Jamaica has been a beneficiary of this. Our electronic government procurement reform was actually funded through the IDB and funding that we got through the Korean government. So these are some of the areas that you can look at. Jamaica has also benefited through the World Bank's contribution to looking at our handbook and setting up standard bidding documents. The reform that is going on now, the IDB is very much involved along with the EU. And it's when we make these representations and networks like this, and in this particular situation, when we come to the network and we are able to put on the table what we're doing and the support that is needed, we get the grants to do it, and we deliver.
I'm from the Cost International Program, which is an infrastructure transparency initiative. And I've been asked to talk to you about cost and how we're improving transparency in our member countries. And also, by extension, then, how that is contributing to positive changes at the project level, but also wider programmatic reforms. We know that global construction is going to be worth $15 trillion by 2025. And OECD statistics tell us that 10 to 30% of this investment will be lost to corruption. Now, from our experience at Cost, we know that a similar percentage, 10 to 30%, will also be lost to inefficiency and mismanagement. So what this means is that if we can find ways in which we can reduce corruption, reduce inefficiency, reduce mismanagement, we could make potentially savings of up to $5 trillion. Now, the situation in Latin America is no different. We know that $1.5 trillion in infrastructure investment is expected in the next decade. But we also know that this is not enough. We know that a great deal more in investment is needed to meet infrastructure needs here in this region. In fact, the infrastructure spending gap is equal to actual spend, meaning that an additional $1.5 trillion is required in investment in order to meet citizens' needs. So again, what this means is that we need to maximize the value from infrastructure investments. We need to maximize the value from every dollar spent on infrastructure so that we can really stretch the benefit for citizens. Transparency International's Corruption Perception Index, or CPI, also tell us that almost all of Latin American countries rank in the bottom half of the CPI. So again, what this means is that there is a role for reducing corruption here in the region so that we can deliver better infrastructure service delivery. And this is where COST can help. So what is COST? COST is an infrastructure transparency initiative. It's centered around three central pillars: the multi-stakeholder approach, disclosure, and assurance. Now, the multi-stakeholder approach is key. Essentially, it means that stakeholders from government, industry, civil society, sometimes academia, often multilateral and bilateral agencies like the Inter-American Development Bank or the World Bank, coming together to work together to deliver solutions, to deliver change, to work together towards a common goal. And the importance of this approach is that it gives the initiative or it gives the program credibility. Because it's not just government that's saying, we're going to improve transparency and we're going to do this. It's not just industry saying, we're going to improve our performance. It's all the stakeholders working together and agreeing that we're going to do this. And not only is it a cooperative approach, but it's also a check and balance, because you have eyes on each other and you can check and monitor to see whether the people who say that they're going to do something are actually doing what they say they will do. Next, disclosure. Well, we're a transparency initiative, so that's essentially what it is on the tin. It's about disclosing information on public infrastructure projects into the public domain. And finally, assurance. Assurance is an independent review of the disclosed data. It looks at the information that has been disclosed to check that it complies with the transparency requirements. So what is the compliance? And it checks also that the information that is disclosed is accurate. But more importantly, it interprets the data that is disclosed into simple language, in a simple format that is easy to understand so that all people, the man on the street, can easily understand it. And Lindsay talked about this earlier on, about mountains of data, or very complex data, very technical information that may be out there in the public domain, but it's worthless and meaningless if people can't understand it.
We're here with John Thompson. He is the project manager for the implementation of the electronic procurement system. Welcome, John.
Happy to be with you.
So there is a name for that system. It's called GoJEP.
Well, GoJEP is the website. It's an internet-based system. It's accessible on the internet at gojep.gov.jm. So that is gojep.gov.jm.
So as project manager for the implementation of the public procurement platform and the system, what was this whole project about? How did it come about? How long did it take? And what's the implementation been like?
Well, it's important that the public realize that the government is actually the largest buyer of goods, services, and work in the island. In fact, over some 600 million US per year. And an electronic procurement system provides a medium for suppliers to be able to participate in the tender opportunities. What that means is that the transactions, the tenders are published in this electronic system. Suppliers are required to register. Based on the industries that they subscribe to, they are notified of tender opportunities, and they have the ability to download the tender documents, prepare their bids, and submit their tenders all online from the convenience of their home or office. So that leads to a tremendous improvement in efficiencies. It increases the ease of doing business, so it's all in keeping with the government's thrust to make it easier to do business with the government.
The persons and the entities that would log on or register for this system, are they only Jamaican companies?
No, it's an internet-based system, so the opportunities are available for anyone from anywhere in the world. However, based on the different methods that are used for each tender, some tender opportunities are only suppliers who have local approval by the National Contracts Commission are able to participate in these tender opportunities. So just to clarify, the electronic platform, gojep.gov, suppliers self-register on the platform, but we also have a pre-qualification entity called the National Contracts Commission that pre-authorizes these suppliers to be able to participate in government tender opportunities when they are published using what's called the National Contract Tender Method.
Okay, and how long has the platform been up and running?
The platform went live in July 2015, so we have been using it approximately, that's 18 months. We are in fact still piloting the system to some extent, in that we are only now undertaking tenders in 6 industrial sectors. And those sectors are the computer industry, pharmaceuticals, security, motor vehicle, consulting, and we will shortly, I believe, be doing equipment vendors. So the strategy is to bring on suppliers on an industry basis. And that works for us because it ensures that we have coverage and ensures that the opportunity is available for all suppliers in a particular industry. Eventually, the system will be used for all procurement tenders that the government offers. But it's a journey. We expect that by 2018, certainly all procurement opportunities will be rendered through this platform.
Your presentation went into some of the challenges within public procurement. Would you say those would play a role in the type of work that you have to do, the challenges that have been identified?
Well, those challenges that have been identified are things that we need to resolve. Because as you know, for example, if CSME, the CARICOM CSME is now moving ahead to presenting the draft bill and protocol to COTED, which is an organ of CARICOM for approval. And it means that we must get buy-in from our ministers of trade, and we must have the involvement of our ministers of finance. So we are working collectively as a task force in terms of the issues that we want to present, the things that we want to highlight to our ministers. For example, areas that we want change that would not work for us as member states. So that is the role, the work that we are doing as a task force.
And would you say the challenges that exist are similar within Latin America as opposed to the Caribbean?
They may not be the same because Latin America is far ahead of us in terms of its reform. For example, Jamaica would not be the same as the smaller OECS countries because Jamaica has had continuous reform. For Jamaica, reform didn't just start like 5 years ago. Some of us have started our reform from 1997. Jamaica is a lot earlier than that. So we had varying stages of the reform. With your last director, Shirley Gale, I think you had made quite significant progress. And then with Cecil coming on, there's a lot of progress being made because you have financing available. The whole IMF program that Jamaica is implementing, which takes on a more comprehensive approach in the reform, in looking at the entire public service, is an asset. It really forges the way in terms of dealing with the reform. In the other countries, we have more piecemeal interventions. Guyana and Trinidad, that is just as big as Jamaica, their reforms are much slower in terms of what they are doing because they don't have the level of technocrats to push the reform. And then there's no buy-in. The political buy-in is not there. There's not a champion or an advocate to drive the reform, which is critical to reform.
So we spoke with Cheryl earlier, and Cheryl was telling us about the training center that's at UTEC. You have more information about that. Tell us.
That's right. The Caribbean Development Bank with World Bank are jointly financing the Regional Procurement Center. And we had a very intensive procurement process to select a regional institution which would house the center. And the successful institution was the University of Technology right here in Jamaica.
How many institutions went up for that?
I believe originally we had about 8 or 9 institutions, and it was whittled down to 3, and then finally UTEC won the competition.
So what does it mean for persons who want to get training in public procurement and going to UTEC?
What we're hoping to achieve is that UTEC will develop a suite of training courses for public procurement professionals, and there will be a foundation course for those who are completely new to public procurement, as well as an accredited set of qualifications that are offered through the Chartered Institute of Procurement and Supply.
Okay, and the course, is it a certificate, is it a diploma, is it a bachelor's? What kind of program is it?
It's a certificate course, but eventually it leads to a diploma.
Okay. All right. So this training will involve what kinds of aspects of public procurement, because it's broad. It has legal aspects, it has logistics, all sorts of things.
You're right. It's a very wide and demanding field, and it will be covering all of those aspects to different degrees. Obviously, the level of detail and the complexity will increase as you move up the series of qualifications.
And so training is considered very important. So it's good that we have this sort of thing that's available to persons. Is it open for persons who are just interested in procurement, maybe coming out of high school, not sure what to do, or is it also available for persons who may be in another field and want to make a switch?
It will be available for both, and the longer term aspirations for the centre are to open up the training to not just the public but also the private sector.
Okay.
And the centre is also looking to build on the capacity building training work they do in other areas such as research, policy, and other aspects linked to public procurement.
And that's it from us here at the Montego Bay Convention Center for the INGP conference. I am Camille Sinclair, and you are watching Business Access TV. Stay tuned.